Hi, I'm Jennifer of Celtic Knot Crochet, and today in this video I'll be showing you how to do some parts of the Galway necklace. The Galway necklace is a pattern you can find in my Etsy shop. The link to that is in the description below. You'll need the pattern to complete the necklace. Thank you very much for your support and your purchase. But in this video I'll be going over the supplies. I'll be going over how to weave this knot, how to put the whole necklace together, the beads and the chain, and then how to stiffen the necklace. So I hope these different parts will help you be successful and complete the beautiful necklace so that you can wear it or gift it to someone you care about. And don't forget, while you're here, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to click to subscribe. Let's get started. For the crochet part of this project, you're going to want to use some embroidery floss. I love embroidery floss for jewelry projects because it comes in so many beautiful colors and you can find a lot of things that coordinate together and look really nice. For this demonstration, I'm using number 702 of DMC 25 embroidery floss, and in one of these skeins there's about 8.7 yards or 8 meters, and you'll want to get 2 skeins. Now what I always do with my embroidery floss is I take it out of this skein that you buy it in and I wrap it around an index card, or you can buy little embroidery floss cards, and then I take the label and I tape it on. And this is how I like to do it. I take the labels off and then I carefully open up the loops inside here and put it on my wrist. And then I find one of the ends and I just wind around like so. And you'll want to make 2 of these. So make 1 card for one skein and 1 card for the other. And you'll see in the directions that you'll make half of the crocheting with one skein and then half of the crocheting with the other, and this way you won't have to do any joining and your delicate jewelry project will look its best. So that's just a little tip for you with the yarn. And then you'll need a 2.75 millimeter or C crochet hook. You'll need 3 stitch markers. I use 2 of one color and 1 of another. You'll see why in the pattern and later when we get to weaving the Celtic knot. You'll also need a necklace chain. I found this at my local Hobby Lobby. It has a clasp and it's all ready to go. You'll want a cork board like this. I'll show you more about this when we do the weaving. And you'll need some straight sewing pins. And then for finishing the necklace, you'll want to have some jewelry pliers. If you don't have jewelry pliers, you can use needle nose pliers. They're just not as delicate as these, but they would work. And then you'll want 3 teardrop beads. Let me zoom in here on the beads for you. These are less than a 1/2 inch long, and they have a hole going across the top. And then you'll want 3 seed beads. These are large seed beads. You could use small seed beads. These are 6/0 seed beads. You'll want 2 jump rings. These are tiny rings that help you join things in jewelry together, and they have a small opening, so you can open these and then use them to attach the necklace chain to your Celtic knot. So you'll need 2 of those. They're 4 millimeter. Remember, all these supplies are listed in the description below. And then you'll want an embroidery needle. Because the embroidery floss is so thin, I don't use a typical yarn needle. I use one that's smaller. One more tip that I like to share is because the holes in these beads are very small, you'll find that most likely your needle will not fit in. See, that's as far as I can get. So when adding the thread to these beads, which we'll do later, I like to use one of these dental floss threaders. And this is for people who have braces or dentures and need to get the dental floss in between their teeth, they use this. But it also works great for going through tiny holes of beads. So if you see, I can put it here in the bead, and then I would use it to pull the thread right through the top of the bead. So much easier. So I find those a great little thing to have in my notions bag. Now I'll show you how to weave the Celtic knot once you've crocheted the 3 cords. So now that you've completed the cords needed for this project, remember you find the instructions for that in the pattern in my pattern shop at CelticKnotCrochet.com. You'll want to gather your cork board. You don't need one this big. This is 12 by 12. 6 inches by 6 inches is fine. My cork board is 1/4 of an inch thick, and then I like to put a 1/2 inch thick styrofoam board underneath to protect my work surface, but you don't have to have that. And then you'll want some sewing pins, straight sewing pins, and then you'll want to print out the diagram that is inside the pattern. Comes with the pattern, and I recommend printing this out in color so you can see the different paths for the knot. And I pin this diagram to the cork board. And then the first thing that I always recommend before you start weaving is that you take your finger and you trace along the path. So according to the directions, you're going to lay the A cord on the green path. Then you're going to lay the B cord on the white path, and then you're going to lay the C cord here on the red path. So by tracing it over with your finger, your brain kind of processes how you have all these over and unders that are unique to a Celtic knot. So here are my 3 cords, and I use the stitch markers to help me remember that 1 stitch marker is cord A, 2 stitch markers is cord B, and then my longest cord is cord C, and it's very obvious that it's the longest cord, so I didn't need to mark that. Now, a lot of crochet cords have a certain bend to them. So you see how this naturally wants to go this way? So I'm going to use that to my advantage and lay it down on the diagram in its natural bend. If you're left-handed, your bend would go the other direction, but you can still use the cord in the same space. So I'm starting here at this black asterisk, and I'm going to pin that end and then pin this end here. And then it might be helpful to pin one more time somewhere in the middle. And I can remove this stitch marker so it's not in my way. Now I'm going to take cord B, and I'm going to start at the black square, and I'm going to lay it down. Now I want to peek here because I can see that this path is going to cross either over or under this cord. So I peek at the diagram and I see it's going to go under. And I can lay my cord down and see the natural bend is going this way. So again, I'll just use that direction. So as we look down here at the bottom point, we see that the white path is actually going to go over the green. So I just want to move my pin, put the white path cord or cord B over cord A. And we'll be sewing that together later. So now I'm going to add cord C, which is along the red path. Remember, you want to make sure all of your cords have the right side facing. So for half double crochet, this is the right side. The wrong side looks like this with a lot more bumps. and I'm going to begin over here at the asterisk again, and I'm going to overlap the two ends like so, and then I'm going to follow along the red path. So right here, when it passes over the green, I see that I'm going to go over, and I'll pin that in place to help with the cords. Then I'm going to follow this way, and I see that I go over cord B right here, and I can pin right in that spot too. This helps everything stay on the diagram so I can keep track of where I am. Then I'm going to pass down this way, and I'm going to peek at the diagram, and I'm going to go over this side, but then if you look, I go under this side, under the white. So over and then under, just like this. And I'll put a pin in here again to keep it where I need it. And now we head this way, and I peek at the diagram. I'm going to go over and then under this one. And then now this is my last section right here. So I'm going to go over, then under, then over. And then when I get over here, it overlaps on top again, like this. And then I can adjust it so I like what the knot looks like. I might have to remove some pins so I can adjust the cords so everything looks nice and even and pretty, like so. And there you go, that's how you weave the knot. Now what I'm going to do is here where all these knots meet, cords meet up, I'm going to pin across so they stay in place. You see that there? I pinned across, and I'll do that over here. Now, here's a little variation. You have to decide which one you would like to do. So you can overlap the cords like so and sew them together, and because they're all in one color, it'll look nice. Or you can decide to have the cord go up next to the other cord so it's adjacent. See how I did that? Like that. And this takes a little bit more sewing skill, but I use these yarn tails and I sew the cord adjacent just like this so everything lines up, and when you wear it, it ends up looking like one long cord. So you have to decide. You can either go over or adjacent. And you can do that at the bottom point as well. So I'm going to pin them so they're adjacent. It doesn't stay great, but I'm not going to be moving this around a lot. And I didn't remove my stitch markers, so I want to do that here. And same thing. And I'm going to use these yarn tails to sew this cord right there so it lines up. Instead of overlapping, it's adjacent. And I might do that on the bottom too. And I remove all the pins going up and down. And it looks like I could adjust it a little bit more to make it even. And what I like to do is once I have it looking like I like, I pin a couple more places across. That way all my spacing stays put and my knot looks its best. And then I'm going to remove my knot from the board, turn it over, and I'm going to use my embroidery needle to sew these joins together and to sew all of these crossings. So here's a quick little demonstration of how I sew the cords together. I just use the yarn tail with my embroidery needle, and I pick up a little of one cord and a little go through the other cord, and this is called a whip stitch, and pull it through, and I just check every once in a while that the stitching isn't showing on the front. And there, it looks nice and all one color again, so it blends in. And then I can carry this yarn tail up through the cord, and if I have enough length left, I'm going to do the same thing at this crossing right here. Now, one tip for you, this can be quite tedious, so you could hot glue or fabric glue the crossings, but sometimes it pokes through your stitching, and you don't want a glue gob on your pretty necklace. But if you want to stiffen this project, which I highly recommend that you stiffen this knot, it will hang much nicer on your neck, and we'll do that in one of our next steps. The stiffening will actually help it stay in place if you let it dry flat overnight, and then it'll keep its shape nicely, and then once it's stiffened you can add a little bit of glue, and the stiffener prevents the glue from bleeding through your cord, and it works nice and fast. Again, I like to use glue on something like this because I'm not going to be washing it, and it works fast, and then you don't have to do all this tedious sewing of the crossings. But you definitely have to sew the 3 points where the ends of the cords meet, and I would definitely sew maybe this center one and this center one, and then the others we can glue later. Let's move on to adding the chain and the beads, and then how to stiffen it. Once you've sewn your crossings, then you're ready to add the beads. And if you look here, I have them coming down a little bit in from the side on the left and right, and then one right here at the bottom point. So let me show you how I do that. First, I take some of the matching thread. This is not actually the same color, but let's get my example here. So I take some of the embroidery floss, and this is a little thick for the beads, but if you've worked with embroidery floss before, there are actually 6 strands in the floss, I think 6, and I'll separate the strands and pick 2 or 3, and I've already cut a length. So it's pretty easy to do that because it's very common to do when you're doing embroidery. And then I'm going to use this dental floss threader that I talked about at the beginning in supplies. And here are my beads. So I'm going to prepare the bead element in this way. Now this works really well with beads that have a top cross hole. So see if I can get it in focus here. So this bead has a hole going across the top like that. Now there are other beads that have holes going down through the middle, and I can show you how to do that in a minute. It's similar, but there's a different way that I like to do those, because sometimes it's hard to find this type of bead. So with your thread on the beading needle, I go through the hole, pull it through like so, and I want to keep it like that. So I thread it through, and then I'm going to bring those 2 ends together . This is about an 8-inch piece of thread, and I'll put those 2 ends now through my special needle. See how I did that? And now I'm going to go through the seed bead. This is a large seed bead. It's 6/0. You could use a smaller one. Smaller one can be a little trickier to get the thread and the needle to fit through. You might have to do one side of the thread at a time. And by doing that, it creates this nice little element very, very simply. I think the seed bead gives a nice finish to the bead element. And then I would take my embroidery needle and put these two ends together. So now I'm using the sewing needle, and I'll get my necklace here and go right through the point, like so. And I just don't want to pull too hard or I'll pull the bead too tight. I want to make sure that the bead hangs nicely so I can pull the thread out a little. And there we go. And then on the wrong side here, I like to go back into the crochet fabric and put my needle through the loop of the thread to create a knot, and maybe do that one or two more times because I don't want the bead falling out. It's a nice faceted glass bead. Looks really pretty in the sunshine and in lights at a special event center. And there we go. That's how you add the bead element. So I'll do the same thing on the other two sides, and then we're ready to add the chain. Let me show you first how to add an alternate bead style in case you can't find one like mine. Okay, so real quick, here is how you would use a bead that has the hole coming down through the center. So you can use these as well, you just attach them in a different way. So I still use my beading needle, and I put the thread on and I go down through the top of the bead. And again, I want to make sure that I still have one end of the thread coming up out of the top of the bead. Keep my needle on the bottom here, and I'm going to use an even smaller seed bead and put that on, thread that right on afterwards. Okay, I know it's really tiny here. So that's what I have so far, and now I'm going to go back through the bottom of the bead, but not through that seed bead. I'm going to go back through the teardrop bead, pull the end through, and now I have this nice little anchor here, or a stopper, and that just, you can turn it so it looks like that. And then adjust the top strings again so they're even and easier to work with. I'll put my beading needle back on, and then I can use the larger seed bead on top like I did before. And again, if I were using this gold bead, I would use some yellow or gold thread so you didn't see it, but for the sake of demonstration I used the green so you can see how it works. So that is how you can use a center hole teardrop bead if you don't find ones like mine. Now we're ready to attach the chain. I bought a chain that already has a clasp, and I like this one because these chain pieces are nice and big but really pretty looking, and then the end of the chain has this adjustable part, so depending on who's wearing it or how long you want the necklace to be, you can easily adjust it while it's on your neck. What I do is I take the chain at the smallest measurement, and you can change that if you like, if you know you're going to want a bigger one. I find the center and I'm going to use my jewelry pliers to cut these chains. Now, jewelry pliers can cut way back in here, but if you plan on doing a bunch of jewelry, or if you looked in the description below, you can see the link where you can buy several kinds of jewelry pliers, and these are wire cutters and they work great. So I'm going to use one of these and just cut that large piece there. And then there's these little pieces. You see the little ones? I don't need that in there either. So cut off those on both ends of the chain. So I've opened up the chain right at the center. Okay, so you can see how that looks now. It's opened up, and I'm going to add each side to the side of my necklace, and I'm going to work right into the loops of the stitches. And remember, we're doing all of this before we stiffen it. Once we stiffen it, it's hard to work in these crochet stitches, so we're doing all this first. And I'll zoom in here so it's even easier to see. And I pick up my jump ring, and when I open a jump ring, you always want to twist it this way so it opens and looks like that. You don't want to open it this way. That compromises the strength of the metal here, and it just won't work well for putting it back together. And I'm going to go through right there at the point, through a couple stitches. I'm picking up a couple threads here in the stitch. I don't want just one thread. I want to hold on nicely. And then I'll put the necklace chain right on the jump ring and move it back to close it up. And maybe I'll squeeze it a little like that just to make sure. And there we go. And I'll do that on the other side, and my chain will be attached. That's it. So the last step will be stiffening this knot. You're almost finished with your necklace. So when you want to stiffen, what I do is I gather a small piece of corkboard, or you can use cardboard, foam core board, something that a pin will stick into. Then I use a piece of aluminum foil, and then I have a bunch of pins that I save for stiffening projects, because the glue will ruin your pin and you won't be able to use it for anything else. So I just set those aside. You can rinse them off, but I like to just keep them for this. And what I decided to do was wrap my bead elements here with a little painter's tape just to protect them, and that'll come off very easily. And I have the chain going up like this. You can cover that with the painter's tape too if you want, but I can just be careful. And I want to pin my knot into the shape that I like. So this is a very small knot. I'm not going to need a lot of pins, but it's nice to pull the corners taut and this bottom point here. And maybe I'll put one there, we'll see. And I've laid this face down. So this is the wrong side of the knot showing. And I'm going to use the fabric stiffener that I like to pick up at Hobby Lobby. Another little tip for you is I put the date on top of when I bought it. So this one's getting close to needing to be replaced because I found that if you wait too long and you have it around in your house too long, it stops working. So you need to get a fresh bottle. And I love the tip on this because I can just open it up a little bit and dab on the stiffener. And if you want a detailed video on how to stiffen your crochet projects, you can find it up there at that link. I have something that goes over stiffening in detail. And once I've gone around the whole knot, I blend it in with my finger. And then I set it aside in a nice cool, dry, hair-free, dust-free area and let it dry. And if I'm working on this and it's warm outside with some sun, I often will put it out in the sun and it'll dry really, really fast. And I usually like to repeat this whole process a second time. So after it's dried, then I come back and cover the entire crocheted cord again, blend it in again with my finger, and let the second coat dry. Here I have my necklace Celtic knot motif completely stiffened. I did 2 applications, let it dry in between. So I'm going to remove the blue tape off the bead elements, take out the pins, and let's see how it looks. And there we go. And you can see how it holds its shape. And sometimes what you can do is just bend it a little so it's not so stiff because it's up against your skin. And there you go. The Galway necklace is complete. I hope you enjoyed making this project. I hope you found this video tutorial helpful. And if you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to help. Thanks for watching. Thanks for purchasing this pattern, and happy crocheting.